are these boss fights? And if so, do they work well? Of course, the boss fights in Asylum were a last-minute addition, causing most of them to feel sloppy, aside from Killer Croc and Scarecrow. However, these feel more like a dungeon crawler and platformer level, respectively, just with the twist of iconic villains waiting to pounce on Batman, making him the prey. The first Scarecrow encounter is pretty easy, the least involved. It took me about 40 seconds. But the last two are harder. Scarecrow no longer spins around in a complete circle, he only looks from side to side. In the mansion encounter, he looks to the right for about 9 seconds, the left for about 4, with the addition of skeleton enemies. In the intensive treatment encounter, it's about 5 seconds versus 3, and there's a whole section dedicated to combat, with another addition of Titan skeletons. The concept itself is great, utilizing otherworldly, nightmare-like imagery with Crane acting as DC's version of Freddy Krueger. Gameplay-wise, the levels are a little too simple to the point of boredom, something that the music and imagery can never save. With music in mind, the track is pretty short in measure, with no variation, so I wouldn't be surprised if Bruce did go crazy. The intensive treatment level is probably the only good one, with the most going on, as well as the hardest. The morgue level acts more like an introduction to a concept that isn't explored further, and is somewhat boring, and the mansion level is just okay. This leads me into more talk about the potential a remake would have, reworking these encounters to have a bit more bite. Maybe the first encounter starts out easy, only to take a turn into modestly challenging, and finally ending with a sharper turn into really challenging. Perhaps it could also take place later in the game as one bigger encounter in the intensive treatment, rather than 3 smaller levels. Scarecrow still appears in the medical facility basement and you give chase, but he does not use his toxins on you yet, and you proceed to rescue Jim as normal. You can still go to the morgue to find Warren White's organs for Riddler. Next is the mansion. Instead of Crane forcing a detour, you find the laser gates unlocked by default and find Dr. Young as normal. Finally, the encounter begins with the game seemingly crashing, leading to the level taking on the appearance of all the different places you visited up to this point, including the penitentiary and the Batcave. Not only that, but there are some added elements meant to break Bruce, such as Jason being in this chair instead of Bruce himself, and Joker holding the button to shock him, as well as seeing his parents hanging from a ceiling at various points. Next is Killer Croc's lair. This one actually works a little better due to Croc having more of a presence and adding tension. He can jump out of the water at any point, sometimes not in your line of sight, so you always have to be ready with your battering equipped, and sometimes he just feels like destroying the wooden planks laid throughout the maze, just to mess with you. However, that leaves one problem with this mission. It really is a maze. Thankfully, Bruce already put a beacon at the entrance so we can find our way back by following the signal, but man does it feel like it takes forever. By the time you've gathered all the spores and avoided Jones, you wish you could just teleport out. Not because it's scary, to be frank, it isn't anymore, but because these spores just had to grow deep within the sewer network. You know, growing up, I never understood people's problem with sewer levels, but now that I've actually played some games, I totally get it. You guys were right. Just like with the Scarecrow levels, I don't think Croc's level ever reaches its full potential. It's hardly built upon the further you go. It's the same 2 things you need to watch out for. Run away from the breaking planks, hit him with a batarang when he pops up. Unlike Mr. Freeze, Wayland never adapts his tactics to counter Batman's. And by this point, you should have all your gadgets. Why not use the line launcher or the Batclaw? Maybe Batman could hide in dark spots at first to avoid him altogether. Then he uses the batarang during the first encounter, only for Wayland to finally rip his collar off. Next, you use the line launcher to kick him back into the water. Maybe Wayland could start stalking you above the water, forcing you to take different routes to reach the spores and or the entrance. And instead of giving him dialogue that basically alerts the player that he's about to appear, make it more subtle. Softer noises like water being parted, the creaking of wood, Waylon's breathing, and even then, make it random so that the player is always on edge. Because even though it's not listed as such, this is totally a horror game. As is, the level is scary at first, but quickly loses tension, especially when you realize that as long as you don't run, it doesn't make a difference. At the start, I moved as slowly as possible, while crouched for good measure. Then at the end, I crouched walked as fast as possible and felt no difference. Waylon's appearance ended up feeling scripted, and he appeared too often, making it less scary and more annoying. Also, notice how he never destroys that last plank of wood as you're running away. I don't know why, but that bothers me. Convenient.